taking a build that's powerful and customizing it for tankiness so that we can run the whole sensation of running around in the hardcore mode, daring a great challenge to come our way and push the fucking boundary of the adventuring that we're doing in this meditation mode. Let the most ancient of random spawning enemies come forth from here and challenge my resilience and toughness. Let's see it. That's the entertainment of this gameplay. So that we may simply be amused when the character is killed. The great joke. The joke of death. This way I may meditate with amusement up until such point as such a situation occurs. This is the vibration, the literal vibe of the Joker. Let us just see what happens. Let us see what transpires here. Therefore, it's up to me to spend time on the porch, but also leave it, and also go to the area where it's more likely something very threatening will happen. That probably won't happen while I'm farming on the porch. Because it's got too much safety, it's got too much familiarity. That's when you must begin the game again, if you're absolutely stuck in a completely familiar space where you can't get anywhere else anymore. So why I like the image of the two-door puzzle in the beginner's guide is it sort of represents that. It says you can stand in here for all eternity if you want to. Just like what the Stanley Parable was saying to you. You're free to stay in here in this dark spot between the two doors, but to solve this puzzle you just press the button behind you that is on the door. And you select that button, and you literally choose the function that opens the other side of the door, so you may also leave the comfortable safe space and experience the rush, the unfamiliar, the experience of that which is there. If you just take steps forward to experience it, then you acquire it. That's how you get it, by just walking forward into it. There's no other way. There's no other grasp of it. Walking across it is the only way. Like, if you were turning the crank on the music box, you have to rotate that. You have to do that motion to hear the noises, to hear the music that plays. That's the same with adventure. You take the steps toward that thing on the horizon. I use this image to describe the feelings I had when I first just sat here playing the video game and listening to the Watts lecture. That specific combination created the insight, the Satori point of what the educational content I'm pursuing is for, and what I'm doing by walking toward that small light on the horizon from a place of complete and utter darkness. In my lowest depression point, I accidentally found this information, this knowledge about the adventure image, the imagery of questing toward a small light on your horizon from total darkness. That's what these games convey and express and resonate. That's what important to games resonate the hardest. They're the most mystical gaming experiences that you can have. Left myself a note right there so that I may pull that narration into a mini highlight for the Minecraft compilation. While also having an archive of the stream out there, I will now be able to pull the narration that followed the little compilation I did at the beginning of today and have that just marked in the actual stream before it's made into any highlight chunk. Tells me where to look for the stop point. That's what I mean by create your instructions. You just write down what actions you should do, you try those, and then you update, you write the version 2 of it, do that, and you just keep going. You keep doing that. You keep doing the instructions, and then do what the instructions tell you, and then make some more instructions and keep going. That's art. That's what art is. It's just instructional content that rolls forward and forward to eliminate what it isn't and show and celebrate what it is out of the picture. Get rid of what's blocking your view of the picture, see what's actually there, and feel the goodness of what that is that's actually there. You get rid of the fear illusions, so you can actually feel the good part. And while knowing you couldn't understand what the good part was without the little fear door in front of it that you have to walk through to get to it. You couldn't know what the feeling of the joy was if you didn't also have to cross a little scary part to see it. You see what I'm saying? That's why you have to not refuse the fall apart. You have to let that falling occur. When you fall for someone, that's what it means, is you've let that falling occur. So you may feel the free fall, so that you have the entire gravity of the goodness of what it is. You fall through it and you fall around, you orbit, you're in a permanent fall because you are the sky. You are everything falling within sky. This is the whole image of space. And it includes falling. The metaphysics of falling is an image I will discuss and point out in extensive ways during my experience of portraying mystical XP. You have to understand falling, the whole metaphysics of the idea of that feeling of falling, that fear, the energy that is fear, that actually just means you're soaring through the air at the full maximum vividness that there is, that can be felt. That felt because my inventory is full. Totally useless in the adventure metaphysics that I am looking at for game development right now. You have the idea of spending more time and deciding, were you sprinting through, were you running really, really fast back and forth to see its boundary, or were you wandering slowly and with a aimlessness sort of a feeling, and just seeing what's there, just strolling through the woods, hitting at rocks with your walking stick. That's basically, you got that choice, and the amount of time you spend in either one of the activities sort of grows these two polarity points that are like pedaling or turning a crank. They just carry you up to the feeling that is on either point, so you have the full unity, the full information of that kind of purchase, what you're getting by doing those sensations. It crafts the motion. Okay, now we need to pull this activity list up, and we need to just go through these key wardens. I'm going to fight the bosses first. Belial's the one who would scare me the most here, so I'm going to go to him. See if this guy can kill me on version 4. Torment 4 difficulty or not. We're a couple torments above that as far as Greater Rift, so I'll be surprised if a situation of that nature comes forth, and I'll be amused by that. Dislocation. I'll finish this, and then I'm going to level up gems so we can get those super survival gems. Kind of try out different weapons and switch which ones you might benefit from at different times in any given playthrough if you wanted to, without just completely getting rid of your gem. It just allows you to commit an item to being your start again, your tools, your toolbox for if you died, if you got killed, or if you decided you wanted to roll another extra copy of any given character. You start another save file anytime. The only thing is that not being able to keep it if you got defeated, if you went to a risk and you didn't prevail. Not prevailing is just the mechanism where your save file goes away. you can always just keep starting more of them. Doesn't matter when. I didn't have the bone armor up, so my damage was a lot slower. Still didn't have it up because it didn't hit him. Huh, I thought I did just get hit by that attack. First time we killed him in hardcore? I don't think it's the very first time. Yeah, see, September 7th. It wasn't the very first time. Lord of Losing was from doing it on this difficulty level. Okay. Diablo doesn't scare me as much as that guy because he's easier. Go back to Act 4 and get him. Just pauses it, unpause. Those guys are really brutal if you accidentally run across them before level 70 on any kind of elevated difficulty. Breakneck pace, I call that. You elevate the difficulty in the earlier one, so you've really escalated your need to watch out and think about what items you're going to equip, which takes more time. Yes, it does take more time to play it that way. But taking that time to play it that way is crunchy. It has a vibrational content that is part of this meditation that I'm instructing us on how to build it. That's the thing, you get to make all those selections of which way it is you want to do it. So do it this way, try it this way, and see if you like it. And then make whatever changes to it to make it so you like it more. If you don't like it at all, maybe there aren't enough changes you could make to it that would make you like it. See, you just need to find out what it is that gives you that enjoyment. That's what you're going for, is how do you play whatever way gives you the enjoyment of what you're doing. That's how you do it. Moments, however... I hadn't been playing those guys the way I'm playing in this season now that I've got some practicing some times through it already. I can see what I need to do to create a save file of my stash page before taking on something that I can now have gauged as might be a bit more challenging. Benchmarking, I call this. Getting the awareness, really the analysis of what the threat level is and which abilities or actions constitute responding to that threat level. As I could identify myself seeing the threat but not enacting any responses to it. That's the perfect metaphysical thread you need to think about how to decide what to do if there's a situation that's fucking with you, that's making you less sane. First of all, look and see, how do you know if you're less sane? Well, you have to gauge your behavior somehow. You have to determine that in terms of threat. What's the threat to my behavior and my choices? Or the consequence? What's the damage to me that might be caused by my behavior? I think that's the way you would mathematically assess your sanity and read a list with those steps on it to collaborate yourself, to instruct yourself through. I got really good at this because I have horrible executive dysfunction, so instructing myself through a process via a list is like the way I can get something done. I can't really do it automatically. I have to just write a list and follow the list, which I only very recently figured out how to do as a person over the age of 35 at this point. I just finally got a hold of this innovation for my executive dysfunction. Just allows me to create art and do things that require a list of instructions, essentially. I'm not worried at all about Diablo. He will melt underneath my mage. It's funny because my toddler comes up and yells, "Halloween, because I got Halloween mages. She loves Halloween. That's her favorite thing. samurai this way. He's a death samurai. The Joker himself. That's what this armor is like. Okay, 4 more chapter 4 page checkpoints to hit. Oh, we don't get a chest because it wasn't a bounty. We just have to look at the corpse. Yes. I love this ability. Alright, let's get some Joker form going here. Joker form. Yep, okay, got it. He's Bone Samurai. He's literally this fucking guy. This cackling skull grin. That's the definition of my joy. The skull grin. Yes. Final Death Man, the final Death Man that we have to battle as the hero of death. He's the villain. He's a bad death guy. We're a good death guy. Which is a nonsensical assertion. We're bad good. We're the bad and good death guy, and that one's the only bad guy that we have to defeat. So Alan Watts says, you have too much Zen. That's a problem. If you're only trying to be good, that sucks. He says, don't be nice people. You can't, it can't be done. You have to be good bad and see that you're good bad. If not, resist any part of it. If you resist any part of it, you have too much Zen. The definition of not having too much Zen and only having enough is that you're not resisting, nor are you... You're not using any means, active or passive. You're literally only having spontaneity, which is... That's when you don't have too much Zen, when you have only the amount of Zen that's expressive of the human mind without obstructions. That's what he's saying. That's the whole fucking Zen message of Zen education. So here's an interesting social flavor. I have to think about if somebody's asking to do a power level, so I'm going to tour guide them in some way while they get XP. Now you would think the way of trusting this situation is fairly obvious, because the person who's supposedly wanting to attain progression for a character quicker and get to that situation I just described where you don't really have items, and so you rush to the top level, but the difficulty at that point is a bit silly because you don't have the items that correspond to it. Just so your character has some base stats, but he has low, underpowered equipment at that point if he got rushed up to the top and didn't already have equipment. So, if someone's seeking to attain that, and that's their actual goal of doing it, and they're not trying to fuck with somebody, like trying to troll them, then they will stay back and try to make sure their character doesn't get killed. And they'll also trust me to not do something to try and make their character dead. I'm the person who kind of has the ability to troll them. And if I do that by mistake, and I didn't mean to, it will still be funny to me. I'll still be amused by that person's character getting killed somehow as a result of my actions. Now, I'm by no means going to engineer that situation on purpose just to watch them lose their character, because I'm only going to be amused by it if, like, it accidentally happens, and then it's going to be a joke. But you see, it wouldn't really feel like a joke if I was, like, engineering it and being like, I bet this will cause it to happen, or try to influence it. Then I can't enjoy it properly. I can only try to enjoy it properly if I don't try it. Okay, friend request. Let's see how to handle that. So this guy has to trust me to, like, not try and force that situation to happen, or he knows what to look for if it seems like I'm going to do that, perhaps. Maybe. Or maybe he's not trying to defend himself, you see. He might just be spending his energy on having fun. This is what Alan Watts is talking about when he tries to describe the friendly enemy. I'll get you, you little boss. Don't you kill me. I want you to die, you little boss. Oh, he's close to the entrance, too. Hope nothing kills me on my way from here, from the entrance. I a cursed boss doesn't spawn in the first 2 jars right on the edge of the waypoint that I chose to ride in on. That would be crazy if a cursed ancient mob spawned and just started murdering me. I would be so entertained if my character was killed because a boss spawned. My inventory's full, so I can't pick up that. Don't let me be killed while I'm distracted with the inventory. Kill these guys. Kill these cursed witches. Destroy them. Break apart, you witches. There. I haven't really gotten the other survival gems to give me like super OP survival, so I am just seeing how it goes without those gems, with a focus on it through my abilities and my particular actions that I choose during the combat strategy. This is like strategy gameplay that doesn't ever really put you on a time limit. So it's almost like the creative mode applicable equivalent, even though we're saying the word adventure. When you think about what's happening in this gameplay and consider, so in this gameplay mode you're taking a risk that you inherently don't really have to take because you could play the game without that risk, that mode. But in this case you're choosing an extra rule set, which is to go look for risks and don't 100% avoid them, which would be a short playthrough. That would be the equivalent of a casual playthrough where you wouldn't set the difficulty above a certain number. I call that easy hardcore. I did that. I left it on normal and played through the story just for story meditation, just to just play the game with that character and get up to the mode of the game that happens in the adventure, not story chapters gameplay here with questing, random questing, I would say. So it's the creative mode of going about and figuring out what is difficult, what can be defeated versus what defeats you. Basically, if you can't get that sensation of the risk that it is, like to start that save file back at 0 again, what that risk constitutes when you can save equipment but not the equipment that you're holding at that moment. What I mean by the creative mode in this sense is you have to get that sensation, that feeling of it being on the line. The gamble, as Watts literally says in the lecture on trust, to feel that sensation of the gamble is like a acceleration. It's like running faster and getting that breakneck adventuring quality. To really fully experience that, you're also doing kinda what the speedrunner's doing, who is just imposing the game mode where they need to play it straight through, and different rules exist. So in some, you're going to try to get every single 100% that can be quantified that's possible to do in the level. So like on levels where that is possible, it's a pretty simple standard, but they've had to think of rules individualized to a level if there is a requirement that doesn't follow the pattern of the rules, i.e. if there's a bug in the game where for whatever reason you couldn't get to the 100% number on the secrets, so what are they going to do then? And watch you do a best of 2 and then have the shortest average time between the different runs that it requires to basically instruct and show that you've gone to every corner, like to the entire completion that level contains. And then there's any percent or just boss run aesthetic where it's considered complete by going to each boss. What kind of speed can you accomplish with that while instructing that entire playthrough? And then the rules say, well, how much times can you retry, essentially? In other words, you don't do it in separate saved playthroughs, you do it during a singular run, which is one of the elements of risk inherent game rule types. Is if it's saying the rule is the thing we're trying to do for fun here is to do it in one single run and don't save and reload, to cheese it with save, this is the exhibition of skill. In other words, the dance of the whole sequence it is to enter each place in the game specified by the rule set, do the particular thing specified by the rule set for that area of the game, and string that together as an art form, as the dance of going through each part, each component that you're getting through. Rather than skipping it, you're going through it. So like a no-skip run is that. You don't skip any part, you went through in a completionist kind of a sense. Here's each thing you visit in this game, and here's what it looks like, because I'm going there in order to craft this speed run. You're doing exactly that with one save file running, because, so you've got different collections there, and this collection is the one containing all of my Doom and Diablo content that I ran during the beginning of the quarantine, basically, like right before it and then right when it began. That's my Doom and Diablo content. Where is that particular collection? Here we go. Doom and Diablo content episodes. So for this one, we've got to go to the secret area. Slay the boss Nazi. I won't show that one because I just want to show the secrets episode part. This is from 6 months ago, it looks like, that this was produced, but right now is the moment. Okay, we'll fight the boss and then we'll show it. Why not? Actually, one at the moment I ran out of ammo. So I didn't know I had one. I had to run back and look for ammo. Because there's no enemy health bars. Okay. The next one in the collection is the secret area for this exact playthrough. Secrets. There we go. Okay. Then we find the secret area using this map. So this is basically what you're talking about here. There's a bug in the game. Completing this level at 100% would be an example of what I mean. It would require some kind of skip mastery. Some kind of ability that allows you to still complete what's in front of you without your character being killed and say, nope, you didn't succeed, you didn't defeat this. You see how this is a koan of a question here? Because the fact is, your character actually can't defeat it. This is designed to kill your character, period. Like, the way it's designed, what's happening here is you lost. Didn't win in this part. When Davey is frustrated with Koda's game design, it is that aspect he's frustrated with. It's like, so basically this puzzle here would take a really, really long time to figure out. Like, this basically kills you even though there is a solution. Which is the funny thing about that koan. Because there is a solution, well, no, it doesn't kill you. It's just, the question is, how slow does it make you go versus does it let you just leap over it if you want to? So I began to think of that as a puzzle that is optional. It's optional. You can step right over it if you want to. You have no requirement that you have to solve it. That's what is meant by the option to take a risk, even though your character's in the hardcore mode. You've still taken decisions in gameplay that skip it, that go over it. So what if you don't skip it? That's basically what this run is talking about. Let's not skip it. Let's see what's there when we actually do it. Like, let's determine what it looks like if you do it, or if you can do it. Let's just skip. Kinda. It's solving a puzzle that you might skip. And so how fast does the skip is the question. Does the skip take you 10 hours to play, or can you do it in 10 seconds? Because... Because... the word skip indicates that you did it faster, you took a shortcut. So the skips I like to take are the ones that make it take longer. Like, how slow can you possibly do this without standing completely still? Okay, that's a question. In Stanley Parable, they tell you to stop and just stand still where you are, plenty of times. Which you could also do. But that's porch sitting. See, so what's happening here is benchmarking. This is an incredibly difficult gauntlet of an absurd number of these guys. And so that's the kind of example of what custom mode you might make if you had a sandbox for a Diablo map, or like Doom has a huge map-making collective because of that's what's happening. We're doing this same thing that is the speedrunner's game mode, or the hardcore delete your save file if you get defeated by a challenge game mode, is because it's a reset. It's resetting the amount of time it would take you if you had to start again. Okay, so that according to these rules, you now had to start over, and now your total runtime is longer. So what a skip does is says, can we reduce this runtime? And if we do, did we make such a large portal through the game that it considerably is skipping so severely that it's not like interesting to do, that we're not entertained by it? Like, I just skipped the game by pressing quit at the start screen. I win, fastest speed run. Well, yes, you did just do the fastest speed run by saying, how quickly can we stop playing the game? And say the game's over because we stopped playing. That's when the Stanley Parable gives you an achievement for not playing it for 5 years. It's saying you could stop playing and then you could play again after 5 entire years happen. And you could skip that by just editing the clock. You can create a hack that says you did it, but you didn't do it unless you actually do it. If you actually do it, then you do what it felt like to do that. To not boot up your copy of Stanley Parable, even if you cheat that by playing someone else's copy. But you see, the classic completionist says that's not a valid, that doesn't mean completion. Because you're not actually completing the action, you're just doing a trick that lets your game complete the action that you didn't actually do what the instructions said to do. So the speedrun of getting that achievement is literally a video, a film, of the 5 years of your life that you didn't play the Stanley Parable. Now, some could argue you're still playing a game even if you're watching the gameplay. So you would have to completely not witness gameplay of the Stanley Parable for 5 full years, which also means you can't think about it. So that's impossible. I guarantee you, after you've played the Stanley Parable to receive any of the achievements that have you actually playing it absorbed into the message, the koans within. You can't not think about it. Its mythos is so incredibly huge and resonant. It's a gong that just continues vibrating. You hear the sound of the Stanley Parable for all time. So I had this, one of the mantras in the episode era that this is, the chapter of my project, is once you begin playing the Stanley Parable, you could never ever leave. If that's 100% true, the exaggeration of that, if that's actually reality, it means that you technically can't get to play Stanley Parable not for 5 years, because you couldn't have not thought about it. Once you begin playing the Stanley Parable, you can never ever leave. So don't play the Stanley Parable for 5 years is one of the koans in the parable. It's one of the things that asks you to ask the question of asking questions, get all the way into it, and see, okay, well, I've already begun playing the Stanley Parable, and there's no way to stop playing. Even though exit the game is an option you click on, you can't get away from it. You couldn't get rid of it, nor can you gain hold of it. You can't, neither thing can happen. Once you've encountered it, you are in the Stanley Parable, period. That's how I feel about the Stanley Parable, because it's a koan, because it's a parable. If it weren't, this wouldn't be. I wouldn't be saying this if it weren't actually a parable, a rich, crunchy koan that conveys this metaphysics. It conveys educational metaphysics. That's what happened to us when we played Super Mario 3 and Super Mario 64, is we encountered the metaphysics of this questioning. So if you could continuously fire here without running out of ammo, so you can kill these guys as fast as they can walk up, you could theoretically defeat this without cheesing it. The bug here is really the ammo mechanic that forces you to have to go pick up other ammo, and you could create a tool which would allow you to very accurately do that. Or you yourself could learn the dance, the maneuver it would be to walk over that ammo while flawlessly killing every single spion that appears in the room. The reason why you could succeed at this, if you could mechanize that perfectly, is you would repeat that dance that kills all the spions without allowing any of them to get through your continuing fire. That would work, because what happens here, what goes wrong, is the game stops drawing the spions at a certain point. It cannot put any more sprites into the game world. So the makers of this level somehow had to know that there were so many spions here to stop you that the game wouldn't even be able to let you see them. It would become overpowered because they're invisible after you pass this certain checkpoint. That's the checkpoint moment in the fight, where if it was literally no possible way to skip it, and you would always die there, period, and you couldn't complete this level, then the skip would be considered as, okay, when they kill you on this level, that's your time. That would be the fastest possible time, and that would just be saying, well, that's the fastest that you died. That's the shortest amount of time possible to spend playing this level, which goes up to a conclusion where your death constitutes the end of the level, given there's no other possible end to choose. And then after that screen, that's when the credits roll in the video game format of games with an end point. That's meant to say the end. There's no further game to play after this part. It's 100% over. The only play left to do is to start the game again and replay it now. Any game which has that sort of a possible game experience, that it ended, so you have to start again to play more, or just look at the screen for eternity, like in Nintendo 64 games, there's no button you can push at that point. The button input is over. That's the end. Stanley's up above the office. He can't do any more actions in the office. His image is still floating there, but he is not there anymore. that's the end of the game. So the absolute lowest time that you could spend playing this level while still getting to that screen is how fast can you die to one of these Speons. So the next possible rule you could make here is, okay, what's the longest amount of time you can survive before they kill you? So that's not even a speed run now. Now that's a contest of who can marathon this for the most amount of time without getting overwhelmed by it. Which, if there's a necessary, for sure, overwhelmed point, like with mortality, then that would be also finite. There would be a maximum best possible amount of survival you could do, which would basically be you're killed by the final enemy in there. You didn't kill the final one, he killed you. And if you had killed him, then no one would be left to kill you, and there'd be no way to make that death screen happen. When you do that, and then you walk to the elevator and exit this level, that's what you've done. The only alternative was to exit the level or quit the game. Because there's no other enemy left there to kill you. Do you see what I'm saying? You are immortal there in that castle. There's no time limit on it. Your immortality is predicated on no enemy kills you. And if he does, then you have to reload that playthrough. If you don't have a reload button, that's the single save file deletion that I'm talking about here. And so that idea is the koan of begin the game again. Like, start all the way and repeat everything and stop going toward the thing you hadn't gotten to yet. You see, start the sequence and then repeat instead of continue on to other actions. There's a non-dualistic limit point there, which describes the functional impossibility that there's some ending point where there can no longer be any different experiences. That you've now reached the full 100% experience of all sensations there ever were. But it can with the joke of death. With a memory reset, it ensures that you, from your vantage point where you are, could never see all the other... You couldn't be cognizant of all the rest of it in the totality sense, ever. That's not possible, because that's the polarity opposite of having an observation point, a point from which you're standing to view something. You couldn't just keep writing another symbol over the next one and fill the whole paper so there's no paper left to see at all. It's just total darkness drawn. That would be that supposed awareness of everything at once. That's not possible. You can have no possible awareness of everything all at once, because the only awareness you can have of anything is its one at a time viewpoint right now, right now. But to have that, that also depends on there being all the things that's not right now. All of the stuff that isn't this right here defines what this right here is. It's interdependent in that way of the image and the background. So what it isn't is part of the background. You have a non-dualism arrival point there, which says you can only look at what it is right here. That's the only way to actually see it, is to be right here where it is and look at it. So if you go look at something else, you're not looking at this. So the Joker looks at everything through all pairs of eyes at the exact same moment now, but without memory of each other, of doing it. That's the funny thing about the Joker, is how he has the experiences of all the totality of an ongoing infinity forever, and looks through each pair of eyes one at a time, instantly and simultaneously. That's the Joker's simultaneous reality, which is fully dependent on this idea of that this is your one playthrough, and then you have to start over. The next playthrough will be different, but yet there's also this idea of the whole playthrough of each different thing that's possible in any order, in whatever order it does happen to chain. That would be an actual complete playthrough, and the non-dualism concept of that having to exist in order for there to be any individual ones, there has to be an idea of the whole of every single continuity happening, the perpetuity of that, but the repetition nature of it, the fact that it is going on and it's repeating. Because vibration is what's happening, it's going on and off and on and off. And the content excerpts I have are spots where Alan Watts makes noises, and he makes a lot of great amusing noises this way. It's demonstrating the metaphysics of what we're doing here, what this gameplay cognition is. It's questioning, it's mythos appreciation. So you get to that point that you're describing these types of limits and these types of quantifications of XP. But that's just numbers and symbols. The only XP that actually is like the XP is the real experience of it, of being right there to have the sensation, to benchmark that sensation and get into it, get all the way into it and sit with it. That's what the meditation thing is doing. That's where the intersection of meditation and education to me is when you're talking about creativity, when you're talking about building and canvassing what can be built and what has been built, which means you're asking the question. You're walking towards the horizon that is the question or the idea. You're letting the idea be free and float, and then seeing how the idea progresses in this type of metaphysics that is invoked by gameplay of this nature. It's really, it's the crunch of what the adventure school well-being and goodness is trying to hold up, and just look at this. Let's kind of study this, basically, because this is where joy is coming forth. Joy is coming forth from my experiences of video games. So I eventually started asking the question about that. Games like Stanley Parable and Flower altered my metaphysics permanently and drastically, as did the experience of being contained inside jail with no sovereignty. So, you know, the jail game, the beginning, the first time you come across jail in the Coda games is just temporary. It's just a spot in another level where he just tries it out. That also altered my metaphysics permanently and drastically, to be able to view the concept of those two limits, either completely boxing up what you means and not really getting to see what it is because it's just boxed in a jail and can't go anywhere, versus the manifestation of what it is, of the metaphysical feeling of the edge of where you're conscious and the grounding point where there's absolutely no verbals and it's impossible to be experienced except completely Satori floating. It's the only actual sensation there. That everything else is the symbol just pointing back to the sensation. And now bear in mind, the experience of having the symbol invoked brings the same sensation back. It brings you there over again, in a sense, which is what Alan Watts means when he says memory is a present activity. It's you re-experiencing the experience that has taken place. That re-experience of it is what we mean by memory when you recall it. When you've created an impression, you say something made an impression on me. But the image of the flower isn't being given an impression of its petals. It is the object that has petals and the stem and the root. That's the plant model for awareness, is to see that that's what you are. You're not being pushed around by it. That's the petals coming off of the flower stalk that it is. It's the continuity of a reality. So those experiences altered me and built the mechanism in me to seek with questioning, to do asking, and have it be about crafting, about the joy, the incredible, indescribable feeling it was to be in this game experience and to walk here in the space of human imagination. This came forth due to the practice of asking the question, what can be made? What game can we play? How can we play it? What game rules can we make? And how can we share the experience of having made these rules and running through the motion, the choreography of that gameplay, of following those particular gameplay rules, of the interactions you can have with the game, with the self, essentially. This is the self that you're interacting with for gameplay, or even a teammate, a player 2, or an opponent. You're interacting with human. It's human contact. So the extent of asking what kind of an experience can be made for that, and what variations on that can be thought of, and how can we share it after having thought of those variations. So that's essentially exploration of ideas, of concepts that are about creating an experience. Experience crafting, or adventure craft. World building is another word I've used for it. In my earlier narration drafts about my story, my monk realization point, and that's what the story is mainly about, other than the koan part that it is about inherently. That is the thing here in the game that I want to hold up and share, is the transformative power of experiencing this joy, this imagination. That is the power of meditation. That's what we're talking about when we say that meditation is what you're doing because you're doing it, not to make some particular benefit or thing happen. It's what you're doing now. That's what it is. And the game, the Nintendo and the Blizzard gaming and Valve's games and all the little excellent indie successes like Doom and Stanley Parable, to show us these feelings, to bring adventure crafting as a benefit to those who couldn't experience it without the craft of the thing that's been made to lift that up, to celebrate it. So these are celebrations of our heart and of our determination and of our imagination and of our ability to have frustration and have rage quits and get over it. There's a whole game about getting over it. Bennett Body. That's what that game is about. And these are all about the sensations that we feel that we don't bind and control. They are energies that flow, regardless of what we do. We can't turn feelings off. If we could, then in a lot of cases we say we would. We want to get away from the suffering. So we want to turn it off. But when you say you've fallen for someone, you can't. You can't turn it off. There is no turning it off. You're falling. There's no getting back up on that cliff edge when you're falling for someone. You can't turn it off. If you could, you would say you wouldn't want to turn it off if you were really down all the way with that fall of what it is for the full spectrum of the foreground and the background for all the sensations that pulls you through. In the Bruce Lipton talk, he says how the red pill moment is that fall in love with the ideal mate, as it were, which pulls you into the moment. It regains that mindfulness place that you were as an earlier child, assuming you didn't have any extreme traumas. These are the kinds of things I experienced in my story, in the tale of my deaths and respawns. So I have an exceptional perspective because of those mystical experience in the negative, the near-death experience I have, and the facing of loss, of grief related to my parent, and the concepts of these bond alterations and these challenges, the things that I can only describe as trauma because it constitutes experiencing those suffering feelings, those challenging pains and sorrows that exist. That's meditations, though, is the thing we have to realize. You have to realize that fall apart is part of what the sensation is. The life vibration can't function without falling apart, because if it did, it would become impossibly overgrown. There would be no forgettery, so it would just be something constantly becoming more and more substance and less space between the substance until there was nothing but a big forever object that's only solid with no space. Alan Watts likes to invoke that image and describe to people this is what would happen unless there was something automatically keeping it in stasis in a non-dual. In the Pursuit of Pleasure talk, he says that the back and forth has to equalize itself. It has to be perfectly equal. Nature doesn't allow a vacuum. Every action and motion that flows will flow. It will fill back in. That motion of the flow pushes the next motion. There's no possible stopping point. It's just a perpetual motion machine of the energy that existence is, which is love. He says existence is love. That's literal. That is a sentence that 100% contains the sensation and the whole thing, the entire picture, foreground, background. When you say existence is love, that's what's conveyed. That's what it is. All of that is love. That's the love here. When you've got the real contrast to understand each figure and each background interdependent. By having its right here, right now awareness in its experience. Fighting these fucking treasure goblins is definitively tricky. It says I killed him, I just picked up his treasure too quickly and didn't realize I had picked it up. Inventory is filled up on this guy. See, so if there wasn't a way for me to go clear the inventory, eventually you run out of space, is the premise of the amusement of the joke of death. Like, we can't have that because it wouldn't be possible. If it was possible to run up to a run out of space point, then it'd have to be something to come in and destroy that thing again so it could run back up to it again. If it just stopped there forever and never ever did another thing ever for eternity, then nothing would ever be, because where we would be is that point where everything is there and it's 100% clutter and there's absolutely no motion for anything else to move. You see how that's a nonsensical point? It's basically what Alan Watts says in The Message of the Joker, is you can think about that point, but it's only an idea. It doesn't ever really happen, because if it could happen, then there's no experiences ever. You're permanently non-experienced if that could happen. So that's the reason, that's the explanation of why it can't happen. If it could, if that stopping point would stop forever and never ever do anything else again, then that's where we are already, and nothing's happening. And obviously, since something is happening, that's not where we are. Do you see that? We're in the motion. We're in the never-ending free fall, the orbiting. Metaphysically, that's where we are as any type of consciousness, any level of consciousness, from the gong vibrating, being struck, to all the complicated digital everything that we are doing by making digital art that can be heard and seen, and the way our brain makes the vibration of life into those signals for us to already experience. We're just digitizing that experience out to be seen when we craft art, which means we are literally just creating digital versions of the XP, of the sensation we already saw made with our computer attached, that we are currently attached to. We are currently using the computer that is your human, your form, your actual mortal form. You're using that computer to play the human game right now that you're playing. And after you are done using that computer, after it is destroyed and you're done with it, you have whatever computer or experience is next. You have the one that comes after it. If not, then what's happening is it's nonsensically impossible for it to just stop and then never to be again. Well, that means nothing ever could be, because it just went once, stopped, and then only those original ones were ever existed and stopped existing, such that it was as if they never existed at all. He gets into that funny loop where it's silly, it's true and silly. It's the funny insight that's inside of psychedelic mind states, I think, where you're laughing and you're not sure why you're laughing, because of how silly it is to consider that there could be anything that stops like that, and then if so, the definition of that stop is nothing else ever starts. And if that happens, then unless you were one of those experiences, then you had that experience at that moment, but then if you stopped experiencing and it was as if you never were, then nothing ever happened, because that's the only thing that happened, was that one thing, which now that it has stopped and nothing else ever happens again, it was. Like, it's totally nonsensical. There has to be vibrations going and going for an experience of what we're experiencing right this second to be experienceable. Experience can't be, is what he's saying when he says existence already includes non-existence, because of the fact that that recursive loop, which stops, contains just one thing that stops and then nothing else ever. And there's no such possibility. There can't be one thing that stops and then like it never was and then nothing else ever again. It's the means of experiencing experience is the fact that it stops and also happens, that both things happen, the stop and the happening part, the off and the on. There can't be just on, because then there would be nothing else except the thing that's on, because each thing can only happen one at a time. Once you've accepted the whole metaphysics of being here now, it only happens when you're actually here in the XP of it happening, or the part where you're kind of re-resonating it, you're recalling it a little bit later, you're just re-recollecting what the sensation was when you were there. So that's now. You're still there now, but not. You're in the thinking of what it was like now when you think about it. You see, that's where you are. So the thinking about it differs by it happening insofar as that distinction. But your brain is a machine which can produce dream state, which has the identical experience. Your dreams are identical experiences, metaphysically. What this means in the science sense, the science that epigenetics is talking about, is that your dream is literally producing the sensation of a sensation you've experienced, to clarify. I'm not sure that a dream, it may be able to time travel you into a sensation you physically not encountered or don't remember encountering, one of those two. Those are functionally the same. You don't remember encountering it in whatever past life you may have encountered it, and you also are failing to recall it happening in the life playthrough that you are in at that moment that you experience the dream recollection of it. It's manifesting a sensation that's already there within you. The film Waking Life was one of my other mystic starting points, and it asserts that as one of its main plot threads, that your dream experience is the actual identical sensation to it. Your brain doesn't know the difference. The machine that is your brain doesn't know the difference between the dream sensation and the awake standard life one. So your memory, your recall of the sensation of a feeling is the feeling. It's identically sensation-wise, even if you don't necessarily experience the full intensity. You may. There may be a situation where the entire intensity of your previous experience, its sensation, is recalled. And I think that's what art is basically doing. It's striking the gong in our metaphysics of those sensations wherever we may have experienced them. It allows us to cross that same barrier in a repetition kind of a way, and go all the way down into it until we've had the experience, so we've gained all the XP there was to gain out of it. I described the completed playthrough for Diablo for this time in gameplay is where your character can no longer advance further into any difficulty where he gets killed, where something ends the playthrough other than him selecting exit game, which is save and quit in this mode unless you choose to delete your save file. That's the one that's gotten to the point where everything that could be acquired, the full completion of what can be found, took place, and so he's bored at that point. He's on a porch, and he can never get back off that porch. Alan Watts is humorously saying that's what the death thing is. It just lets us have the part before you got to that point where the playthrough had an end. Like, it lets you experience what the experience was, to be right there in the now during its moment to be on, and have the whole contrast of both the on and the off, the flow of it, the waves waving. Each wave is waving, and there's another wave waving on before and after it, and that can only be true if there is space between them, and there is more of them continuing waving. The wave depicts what image, what the word image means. It means the waves required to produce what it looks like. So metaphysically, that's what I'm saying with the parable. The parable part of the zenParadox. The zenParadox is the name of, I think I'm probably going to title the game that, but I might not, because another titling might arise as to what the final game's narrative kind of ends up looking like. But so I might. But the zenParadox is the metaphysical parable thing that I am talking about. To have that Joker point of view from the very, very top that lets you see everything by understanding that seeing it's done one vibration at a time, and there's no way around that. There's no cheat to that, because any way of cheating it is just cheating some of the sensations, some of the XP you can actually gather there. So to not cheat that, to actually gather the XP and get all the way down into it, is your Zen. You don't need memory. You're playing a game, and it's important games that you're playing. Type of a mindset. It's the one that's saying, no, we're not going to do a put down. We're going to say all of this XP is worth getting, and you're not getting it unless you're actually going into the XP that is and getting each particle of the possible experience, of the variation in the experience. Okay, so now we have the Butcher battle, and we successfully rose to level 68. Let us examine the skills that we're going to use specifically for the Butcher, considering how we know how that boss battle goes. I'm going to take a short break first, though. Deal with this inventory, but then part of dealing with the inventory is to examine what we have and think about what do we want, what strategy do we want for this Butcher fight. Turn it in and get the XP off of the turn in, and we will be starting level 70 stuff on Chang. First Chang for this season. A little bit underhydrated still. I gotta focus on drinking some of this water. Well, actually, let's see if we get one on the way to the Butcher, and then try to get a 2H Barbarian weapon upgrade. I wasn't going to use my next upgrade for that, because we really do need rings on the Necro, but I'm going to just for the sake of how this playthrough is going. So you see how I'm not kind of changing the rules as I go, I'm just kind of picking a task. Unless it benchmarks incredibly bad, I'm going to take that task on, in order as a means to leave my porch and experience something that contains a threat or a challenge. I'm not trying to go for the craziest threat effort. I'm just putting myself in a situation where something like that might randomly spawn. You know, like I'm not trying to make it spawn, but I'm also not trying to completely, definitely avoid the chance of it spawning. I want both things present so that playing the game has flavor. It has a crunchy spiciness to it. It's the spicy mode that we're playing here. So I would like it here if we were to receive 1 depth breath. Let's make an inquiry to the authorities of the Diablo DAO, and let's see the energy of this flow forth. A challenge plus to defeat whose reward is 1 death breath. Maybe this guy? Oh yes, he dropped one. How convenient. Let's go create an item on the off chance that if we might receive one that has a attack buff, such as Bastion's Revered. That's one of the possible options that may drop, which increases the attack that we're going to do in a very significant, overpowered way. That is what we're going to attempt. How will we attempt this? Two-handed mighty weapon. Yes, two-handed mighty weapon. Forge. Sovereign Steps Smasher. Crafting. Okay. Let's examine its stats. This is a ritual because I have lots of these stored and I'm usually trying this for a while to get something that I need. Another example of one that would be extremely handy would be the Blade of the Tribes. Because then we can use a super overpowered Earthquake and just load up the bar with that attack. Okay, so upgrade costs 25, and so it's the Gavel of Judgment, which is a useful one, but it's only useful for this activity we're doing right now. This beginning thing before we get any other useful one for the builds I want to play. But this one is useful. Now, doing so I think essentially amounts to cheesing the Butcher to a degree that's not already taking place. Maybe it is. We don't know, because I'm about to benchmark him right now at this difficulty. I'm going to guess that this is good enough. I believe that we will smash it. There's a possibility that it'll be a close battle, but we'll still smash it. And there's a slight chance that he gets to the enrage and wins. If that's slightly possible, I'm not ruling that out. But I don't think it's likely enough that I'm going to go cube this item or destroy my Gem of Ease just to guarantee this. I'm going to try him right now. But we have access to Earth and Might and everything right now. We just only have 3 slots. So it would have been cool if we had gotten the Blade of the Tribes right there, because that's the weapon I'm going to pawn before all others. All the others I know how to use to an extent. We're going to need some of them eventually to play the different class sets for the Conquest, but we are on the path right now for... I mean, let's benchmark it against some of these fucking trash. I mean, that purple boss went down relatively smooth. He didn't take too long to knock down. So there we have... Oh, and we're at 420k at level 69. Bro! We ended up at 420k at level 69, so I'm pretty fucking sure that that indicates that we succeeded in this playthrough. All we have to do now is dare this fucking Butcher to defeat us, and let's see if he can. Can he do it? Pretty significant check for the melee character. I think he's more trivial on the Necro. But the way this character has to play without being able to Leap Quake is kind of more safe too. It's a lot like the Necro build because I'm dropping the damage on the ground and just going away from it, basically. I mean, that's what the mages are. They're just little earthquakes that kind of go around with you. They're just little Halloween. Oh, fuck off. Ooh, that's worse than the fucking tornado, that noise. I like the noise, it's just that they didn't make it quiet enough. It's a hilarious bug in the amount of volume that fucking device is creating. They're really torturing us with these torture devices, and the way they're doing it is by putting sound grind in your ear. Bro. Like, I'm gonna talk about this for a second, because I sit in streams that have jump scare alerts. So I can understand, like, hey, do you want to put some money in this machine, in the arcade machine, and the result that's going to cause is I'm going to have a jump at a time I get startled? I wouldn't do that to myself because I have heavy startle, so I don't want that, and I'm also just irritated by a noise that's going over the rest of the sound. I guess that's kind of the lesson in the game, getting over it. Like, it's basically like, well, if you experience it more and more, it's possible that you reach a point that you gain something out of knowing that XP closer. You have less startle ability, which I would think maybe that's what you want to gain. So is that a viable means of gaining it by intentionally subjecting yourself to jump scare startles? I don't know. We'll have to ask Markiplier. I'll have to have an interview with Markiplier to find that out. And find out about, did he feel that his mental health and his overall sensation of being well and being alive was gained, or was actually harmed with PTSD by subjecting himself to Five Nights at Freddy's in such the ways we know Markiplier has. I actually really want to know. I want to know his opinion about this, which can only be done if I were to establish the basic premise of Zen and adventure craft. Alright, I didn't charge up my resources or anything, I just ran straight in. Alright, so how are we going to attack this butcher? I want to see how badly he's getting hurt before I slam the cooldown, but I think it's safe to slam it. Yep, as I predicted. We achieved him for the most part. It wasn't close. Okay, that was not a close battle. Defeated the butcher on master, which is the difficulty I like to stick to unless I feel like I'm cheesing it consistently and nothing is giving me a scare. Why the hell did I go on the floor? That was weird as hell. I accidentally threw it on the floor instead of dropping it on my head. Kind of sounds kind of like when I try to take a drink and I spill it down my face instead. That's why I think it would be funny if you could lose an item by accidentally dropping it, or if you could accidentally fall down a pit and lose your character. That would be a very, very entertaining but punishing aspect of the game to say, you can't drop it. If you drop it, it might disappear. In the game Fallout 76, this happened. Ah, fuck, I forgot to change the weapon gem. I successfully switched to it before it went to complete, but it's possible that didn't boost the XP. Anyways, I actually was going to check on the rings since those aren't better, but I accidentally just destroyed it. So, like an example of what I just said, I dropped it on the ground and whoops, it glitched out of existence. Well, that's the exact same result of me accidentally clicking destroy on it. You see what I'm saying? The ability to have a chance of accidentally destroying something you wanted, or having to lose it because you could only carry it or save it, not do both at once. Those are metaphysical manifestations of this exact thing, the skill versus chance elements that defines playing. Okay, that's full drive. Let's go. I just went back to that one because I was able to quickly throw the gem into it, but we'll correct that in just a second, like 2 seconds after I reach 70. As long as nothing kills me to punish me for reaching 70, wouldn't we dislike that, but be amused because it's happening? Why are you torturing yourself by eating a spicy challenge? Just for the pure amusement of getting through the experience of it. So just strictly for entertainment. See what I'm saying? Education is strictly for entertainment. If you don't ever learn anything, you're never going to be entertained. That's why I think the two terms are somewhat redundant when you've gotten all the way down into what do you mean by being entertained? The pursuit of pleasure? What do you mean by pleasure? I mean something I enjoyed, something I was entertained by. Okay, so let's do only that all the time. Nope, that doesn't work. You can't do that. You'll get sick of whatever it is. You can't possibly actually get the pleasure sensation of it without the skill of swinging with it, back and forth, and selecting, picking out which elements to select, which elements that are you picking out that form that optimal back and forth. That's what the master is doing. The master of a discipline is literally just, he's learned the optimal rhythm, the vibration, which brings forth whatever the fuck the thing is that you're trying to have the pleasure of. So to an extent, it can't be perfectly random. You could have a perfectly random pleasurable event, but generally, it's happening as a result of you walking along the path, along the scaffolding it requires to experience it. Because you can't accidentally plan to encounter an accidental pleasure. So like that surprise when Alan Watts goes, you mean you want a surprise? Okay, so if you want a surprise, that means you have to be surprised by the thing. You can't plan for it and try to create it. But then he reconciles that paradox when he describes the creative person who specifically performs the skill as an entertainment act. That person is doing a controlled accident. He's figuring out how to be spontaneously entertaining in the correct spontaneity way, where it kind of happens accidentally. He just controls it and sets up the situation where the accident comes out. He knows how to do that. That's the skill. That's the Zen no mind thing that you arrive at if you have a high level of skill. You're auto-doing the thing, and so when you go to auto-do it, you get ANAPs, actions not as planned, and that's where the entertainment actually comes from, is the ANAPs. Like, whoops, that action didn't go as planned, that was a surprise, and I'm entertained. Okay, so I must lay plans to surprise myself. The paradox of what he's saying there in the Joker is literally this. The ability to stand on the edge of your porch, where something you can't completely control is liable to happen, and then experience it. That's the surprise button. And he talks about that a lot in the On Being God talk, which was the first line from Watt's audio that actually hit me. It was that sampling from the Dustbusters Delta Sleep track, and they cut it in a slightly different order. So Alan Watts says a slightly modified statement. They copied when he says the word now from one particular line in the talk that's separate from the part they're mainly sampling in the song, where he's saying you come to a great push button place and you examine the buttons, and every kind of pleasure you could wish, you can push the button and bring it about and experience the educational sensation of what that pleasure is. You have a button to bring it forth. So he's basically saying the dream any dream you could wish in another way, in a technological way. It's like, here's a button before you. You can push this button and have literally your prizest, most desired experience with whoever you desire it with. And going on the Waking Life Insight to have any dream you could wish, any experience you could possibly hope to have pleasure from is there for you to push the button and experience. So you get to the end of that and you realize, the Koan lesson is that you realize that you can't have the actual pleasurable part of those experiences without on-off, without the ability to get surprised by it, essentially. So to get surprised by it, you've actually fully accessed the pleasurable aspect of that thing. But you could only know that by the process of skill, which brought you through it on purpose those times and deliberately created the accident, more or less, enough times to see, well, how did I accidentally do that on purpose, exactly? What was the means by which that accident was brought about? And you got some Bob Ross parallels here. He talks about this in his instructional art. That's why I want Alan Watts to come to Twitch. I like that they're running loops of his talks just on YouTube. That's wonderfully enjoyable for me to turn on and combine it with my content, but I really wish they would go on Twitch and do like Bob Ross. And rerun it with a certain structure and have the community really be able to grow around the game playing awe. Because Alan Watts is literally doing the thing that Twitch came forth for. He's literally experiencing this game crafting, this gamesmanship feeling in the form of mythos. Parable and Koan. And Alan Watts needs to be on Twitch, essentially, is the reason why I started doing this. These realizations came from Alan Watts' study and gameplay that I was just combining in my darkest moment of incredible depression. So he's perfectly fit to what happens here on Twitch, the inclusion and the practice of artistry that is specifically relevant to this experience of playing a game and sharing playing a game. That's what he was doing. That's what the Joker talk is. It's a game he's sharing with you about playing games. So I made my ultra compilation over those original Watts insights that hit me at the strongest top level of the plateau. So it became the ultra plateau, the ultra rectangle. And I put it together with WoW Classic, which is what I was basically playing at that moment when that happened. I was in the second month or something of WoW Classic being out, and I was just running the level 25-ish dungeons on my different characters. I have a little bit of content from that, but I'm still going to rerun and do narration while it's running, just as part of what I'm doing here to enjoy my craft. But that Watts Ultra Plateau is the insight point that I'm occupying, where I want to have a vibrant community convening and meditating through the knowledge of well-being and of the liberation thing that Alan Watts is teaching us, that I am also hoping to teach and to make available, so we as a community can exert our intelligence and creatively convene, essentially. We are celebrating, we are having the experience of being a intelligent organism, exchanging the good things that we can make together and experience in a collaborative way. That's the message of the Cosmic Networks and Joker message, I feel, when you get down into the Alan Watts education. It's juxtaposed between those two philosophies. They're really one philosophy because of the self and other unity. You can't be you unless you get all the way into the good things that come from other. And you ask for that. When you need help, ask for it. And when you be a team that actually is distributing your benefits and your ideas around to each other and circulating those emergent gains, then you are truly practicing a mutualistic group that's boosting each other and getting the full actual, what we would call the meta, the combined group power that's available with the different configurations of your different skills and abilities. The meta process of your team assembly and how it's built and what items you're using and trading with each other to accomplish that, and the synergy between those things. Massively meditative online gameplay when there's a big challenge and your team's facing a really difficult boss, or you might just be doing that all by yourself. There was one particular point in World of Warcraft that had that, and I immensely benefited and enjoyed that experience. It was mentally healthy for me to get that experience of the Warlock challenge quest, where there was a difficult boss at the end of it you had to learn how to defeat. That's an education thing happening only through the power of art, through the power of our imagination. I can't stress that enough. The words to convey that are extremely solid and tangible to me. They're objects in my inventory to be able to say that insight about gameplay that's challenging. It's just awe-striking to be able to have this experience in an imaginative, art-crafted space. It's mystical. This is literally the meaning of a psychedelic quest. Okay, we did reach level 70. Flavor text. All energy inflows from and returns to the eternal source, Archmage K. See, there's little koans scattered throughout video games if you want to study the lore. Lore and mythos are kind of like the same thing. That's why Stanley Parable resonates to me at the exact same level as like the Tiki Tiki Tembo story or anything that's out of Eastern kind of lore. Alright. Leave game. We now have this.